This is a case file. But this time, the evidence is closer to home than most people are prepared to look. Every forensic examination begins the same way. There is a body, there is a room, and there is a question nobody thought to ask while the subject was still inside it. The body in this case is a child, not a victim of something the law would recognize, not someone who was struck or abandoned in any way that leaves a visible mark. A child who was handed a role, quietly, completely, before they had the language to refuse it, and then spent the next 2 or 3 decades trying to understand why they could never quite seem to be enough. You were not difficult. You were not broken. You were not the problem. You were assigned. And the system that assigned you, the one you called family, needed you to stay exactly where it put you. 6 findings, 1 final report, and a conclusion that will reframe every memory you have of the room you grew up in. Alfred Adler was one of the first psychologists to look at the family not as a place, not as a home, not as a shelter, not as a unit of warmth, but as a system, a structure, a hierarchy, a set of interlocking roles, each one serving a function, each one requiring an occupant. He called it the family constellation. And what he discovered changed everything that came after him, including what we now understand about why certain children are chosen for certain roles and what it costs them to carry those roles for the rest of their lives. Begin. Before we examine what was done to you, we have to establish what you were inside. And to do that, we first have to correct what you think a family is. Most people describe a family as a unit of love, as a place where people belong to each other, as the first and most fundamental form of human connection. Imperfect, yes, but built on a foundation of genuine care. That definition is comforting, and it is incomplete. A family is also a system, and systems do not primarily organize themselves around love. They organize themselves around stability. Adler understood this earlier than almost anyone. He observed that within every family, regardless of how functional or dysfunctional, there exists a social structure, a set of positions, a division of labor that is not always conscious, not always spoken, and not always kind, but that serves the system's fundamental need to remain coherent. In a healthy family, those positions are fluid. Children grow, roles shift. The system expands to accommodate who each person is actually becoming. In the family you are examining, the one whose documents are on this table, the positions were fixed.
Not because the people inside them were fixed, because the system needed them to be. This is the first finding, and it is the one that produces the most resistance, because it removes the comfortable explanation. You did not receive the role you received because of who you were. You received it because of what the system required. The child who becomes the scapegoat is not the most difficult child. The child who becomes the golden one is not the most gifted. The child who disappears is not the most introverted. They are the child who happened to be standing in the position the system needed filled at the moment the system needed to fill it. Adler spent years mapping how birth order, temperament, and the specific needs of each family system interact to determine which child ends up carrying which role.
What he found, and what decades of research since has confirmed, is that these roles are not randomly assigned. They are assigned with a precision that can look from the outside almost like fate. People with a specific psychology, the ones who need the system to serve their needs rather than the other way around, do not assign roles randomly. They assign them strategically, not always consciously, not always with deliberate intent, but with a consistency, a ruthless repeating consistency that is indistinguishable from design. Here is what the dysfunctional family system selects for when it assigns the role of the scapegoat. Not the weakest child, the most perceptive one. The child who notices things, who registers the tension in a room before anyone has spoken, who asks the question that nobody wanted asked, who sees with a clarity that is almost inconvenient exactly what is happening, and who has not yet learned that in this particular system, seeing clearly is not a virtue to be encouraged. That child becomes the problem. Not because they are a problem, but because what they see and what they will eventually say out loud threatens the story the system tells about itself. The scapegoat is not chosen for weakness. The scapegoat is chosen because they are the most dangerous witness in the room. And there is a second quality the system selects for, the one Adler identified as central to the inferiority complex that forms in the scapegoat over years of accumulated correction. Sensitivity. The capacity to feel deeply. The nervous system that registers hurt at a frequency the people around them seem bafflingly not to notice. In a world of honest people, this is not a liability. It is what allows a human being to be fully present in their own experience, to feel what is happening, to name it, to respond to it with their full range. In the system you grew up in, it was a door, and they walked through it every single time. The operation had 4 positions. They ran simultaneously, and you will recognize all of them, if not from your own role, then from the role of someone else who is in the same room. Position 1, the golden child. The golden child is not the most loved. They are the most useful. In a family organized around a parent who cannot tolerate their own inadequacy, the golden child becomes the proof that there is no inadequacy to tolerate. Every achievement of the golden child is, in some fundamental way, the parent's achievement. Every success is evidence of superior parenting, superior genetics, superior vision. The golden child does not know this. The golden child experiences it as love, as finally, reliably being enough. What they are actually experiencing is conditional approval, structured precisely around the performance of whatever qualities the parent has decided to identify with. The golden child is not free. They are deployed. Position 2, the scapegoat. The scapegoat is the pressure valve of the family system. Every family, every human system generates tension. conflict, disappointment. The distance between who the family believes itself to be and what it actually is. That tension has to go somewhere. In a functional family, it goes into honest conversation, into repair, into the difficult work of acknowledging that something is wrong and deciding to address it. In the family on this table, it went into you. The scapegoat absorbs the system's dysfunction so that the system does not have to examine it. Every time something goes wrong, in the marriage, in the finances, in the parent's interior life, the scapegoat provides an explanation that protects the system's story about itself. It is your fault. You are the reason. If you were different, everything would be fine. It is not a conspiracy. It is a reflex. The system found its pressure valve and it uses it because it works. Position 3, the lost child. The lost child learns early that visibility in this system is dangerous. To be seen is to be targeted. To have needs is to create conflict. To exist at full volume is to invite the exact response the scapegoat is already absorbing. And so they disappear. Not dramatically, gradually, room by room, conversation by conversation, they learn to take up less and less space until they have perfected the art of being present without registering, of breathing without disturbing anything. The lost child is not introverted. They are in hiding. Position 4, the mascot. The mascot is the system's release valve. Different from the scapegoat who absorbs the tension, the mascot disperses it. They learn to read the emotional temperature of a room with extraordinary accuracy and to deploy humor, lightness, distraction at the precise moment the tension is about to become undeniable. They become fluent in the art of making everything feel lighter than it is. The mascot is not cheerful. They are performing a function, and what they sacrifice to perform it is the right to ever be taken seriously about anything, including the things that matter most to them. You may recognize yourself in one of these positions. You may recognize elements of all of them. Different rooms, different seasons, different stages of the same long assignment. What matters is not which position you held.
What matters is what you understand now about why it was assigned and what it cost. The evidence existed from the beginning. This is the part that produces guilt. The recognition that the information was present, there, in the room, documented in your own memories, and you did not read it for what it was. The first thing to understand is not that you were careless, it is that you were a child. And children are neurologically incapable of pathologizing their caregivers. The brain of a child cannot construct the thought, something is wrong with the system. It can only construct, something is wrong with me. That is not a failure of intelligence. It is a survival mechanism. Because if the system is broken and the child cannot leave, which they cannot, then the only bearable interpretation is that the child is the variable. That if they change enough, adjust enough, shrink enough, the system will stabilize. It never does. But the belief that it might is what keeps the child inside it. The evidence was there, and in retrospect, in the cold light of the examination table, it follows a pattern. Exhibit 1. Your achievements landed differently than a sibling's. Not always, not obviously.
A grade, a performance, a recognition. Something that in a different room would have been met with uncomplicated pride, arrived in this one with a qualifier, a redirect, a sudden memory of something you had failed at previously, a comparison that positioned your success as fortunate rather than earned. You registered it. You filed it under something you couldn't name. You tried harder. Exhibit 2. Your feelings were the problem, not the situation. When something hurt you and you said so, the response was not to address what had caused the hurt. The response was to address the fact that you were hurt. You're too sensitive. You always make everything about you. Why can't you just let things go? The hurt was real. The response reframed it as a malfunction in you and left the source of the hurt entirely unexamined to be used again. Exhibit 3. Leaving the role was punished. This is the exhibit that clarifies everything that preceded it. Every time you acted outside the assigned position, every time the scapegoat succeeded visibly, or the golden child failed quietly, or the lost child asked for something, or the mascot stopped performing, something in the system responded. Not always dramatically. Sometimes a coldness. Sometimes a revisionism about your shared history. Sometimes a joke with an edge that everyone pretended not to notice. Sometimes something stranger. A sudden warmth offered at precisely the moment you most needed to trust your own perception of what had been happening. The system does not want you to leave your position, and it has been rehearsing its response to the attempt since before you were born. There is a concept in family systems theory that Adler anticipated and that every serious clinician since has confirmed. Homeostasis. A system, any system, biological, social, familial, has a preferred state of equilibrium, a set point. And when something disturbs that equilibrium, the system mobilizes to restore it. In a functional family, this mobilization is called growth. The system expands its set point to accommodate who its members are becoming. In the family on this table, the mobilization was called correction. You started to grow, not the small, permitted growth the system could absorb without registering, but the unmistakable kind. The kind that was visible, the kind that could not be explained away as temporary or luck or circumstances that would eventually correct themselves. And something changed. It arrived in different forms for different people. Sometimes a withdrawal, a cooling, a sudden distance that was never explained and never acknowledged. Sometimes the opposite, an intensification, a revisionism about your past, a version of you circulated in the family's shared story that bore increasingly little resemblance to who you were actually becoming. Sometimes it was something smaller and stranger, a crisis that required your return precisely at the moment you were most fully yourself, a need so large it left no room for anything else. A guilt so precisely calibrated to your specific history that it was almost impossible to name as a tactic without immediately feeling like you were being unfair. Adler studied this pattern for decades. He wrote that the greatest obstacle to an individual's development is not the external world, not circumstance or luck or the limits of intelligence or talent. It is the style of life. the internalized map of who you are and what you are allowed to want that was drawn for you in the family before you were old enough to hold the pen yourself. You did not stay small because you were small. You stayed small because a system needed you there and spent years teaching you to enforce that boundary yourself from the inside so that it would not have to enforce it from the outside. This is the final finding. It would be satisfying to close the file here with a simple verdict that they were wrong, you were right, and the damage was done to you by other people who are solely responsible for it. But forensic findings do not exist to satisfy. They exist so the same cause of death does not appear in a future file. So here is the part that requires the most from you. The role was assigned before you were a person, before your personality formed, before you had preferences or opinions or any sense of what you were capable of, before you knew that what was happening in that room was not a universal law about who you were, but a local ordinance enforced by a specific system for that system's specific purposes. You built an entire interior life inside that role. A set of beliefs about what you deserve, what you are allowed to want, how much space you are permitted to take up, what happens when you succeed visibly, what happens when you need something. Those beliefs are not yours. They were the system's operating instructions, installed before you could read, and you have been running them faithfully ever since. Adler spent his life arguing against the determinist position, the idea that what happens to a child fixes who the adult becomes. He was not naive about damage. He understood better than most how deep the wound of the assigned role goes, how long it takes even to locate, how much of a person's life can be organized around a position they were placed in before they could consent to it. But he insisted, and the evidence of a century of psychology has not overturned this, that the style of life is not a sentence. It is a map, and a person who understands how the map was drawn can choose to redraw it. The role was assigned. The person who received it was always yours to determine. And here is what the file ultimately reveals, the part most people reach this examination without fully accepting. The system needed you small, not because you were small. It needed you small because you were the only one in that room large enough to threaten it. The scapegoat is not chosen for weakness. They are chosen because they see clearly, because they feel deeply, because they will eventually, inevitably, ask the question that unmasks the operation. The system was not angry at you. It was afraid of you from the beginning. It simply got to you before you understood that. Adler left one argument that belongs directly above the exit of every room like the one you grew up in. One he returned to in nearly every lecture of his final years. Meanings are not determined by situations. We determine ourselves by the meanings we give to situations. The situation was the family. The role was the meaning they gave you before you were old enough to make one yourself. What Adler spent his life insisting, and what this examination ultimately requires you to accept, is that the meaning is not fixed. Not the freedom to undo what was done. Not the freedom to go back and occupy a different position in a room that no longer exists. Just the freedom, quiet, unglamorous, entirely yours, to stop enforcing the assignment yourself. To take up the space you were always meant to occupy. To become, finally, the size you actually are. That is the autopsy report. Case closed.